So make sure I can see this. So the agenda for today is really to look at the IoT opportunities in healthcare. I'm going to cover the options for building IoT solutions with Azure. I'm going to do a demonstration. We cut out of this the stories for innovation with IoT, but I can touch a little bit on where you can read about and follow up on those, and then I'll wrap up with some resources. So when it comes to IoT opportunities in healthcare, I want to talk a little bit about how IoT in healthcare, in the healthcare industry, we find that people tend to really think of, sorry, one second here, I'm just trying to adjust my screen on my side. So people tend to really try to think about how IoT relates to patients and providers in home care and pharmaceuticals. However, it's really important to recognize that IoT opportunities in healthcare span across industries, extending all the way out into manufacturing that you see there on the left of medical equipment and supplies to the distribution of those assets by global supply chains. So with this in mind, I want to take a little bit of a closer look at the opportunity landscape in IoT today. So one of the top use cases for IoT is in continuous patient monitoring. So IoT can enable care teams to extend their care beyond the walls of the clinic, improving the quality of the care through better management of diseases and also helping to reduce readmissions. Related is the rise in opportunities around in-home care. So IoT solutions can assist with our aging population. They can help to monitor recovery and can even help those with more chronic diseases. Next, smart hospital equipment can not only improve patient outcomes through insights gained from data and AI investments, but it can also enable equipment providers to offer better service through things like predictive maintenance. Smart hospital buildings is also an emerging opportunity of interest as we focus on how IoT can help with space utilization. And IoT can also even help with things like energy conservation opportunities in building subsystems. There on the bottom left is inventory management. This is a scenario that is seen across industries. For example, it's really common in retail. And in healthcare, IoT can be used to monitor consumables, ensuring that supplies are available and stocked in the right locations inside of a hospital or a care clinic to improve efficiency and really overall reduce waste. It should really come as no surprise to those who work in pharmaceuticals, but cold chain tracking, supply tracking solutions can really deliver transparency, security, and also climate-controlled assets around the globe. And then last but certainly not least, there's a strong IoT presence in industrial manufacturing space, and healthcare manufacturing really isn't any different. IoT sensors and data can ensure that medical devices and products are produced at high quality and are also compliant with industry standards. So now that you have a baseline understanding of the opportunity landscape, let's look at your options for building IoT solutions on Azure. So I want to talk a little bit about how our investments in IoT have evolved over the last several years. So 5-6 years ago, IoT solutions were really largely targeted at the early market, folks who wanted the newest things. And as IoT has progressed along the adoption lifecycle, we really found ourselves in this chasm between early market and mainstream market opportunities. So in order to capture mainstream market opportunities, we really have to recognize the importance of completed IoT solutions and a level of convenience. So the Azure IoT portfolio consists of a number of well-composed entry points for building IoT solutions. The foundation of this stack that you see at the bottom of this slide includes our offerings for device support, coupled with an extensive set of Azure platform services for IoT. Our Azure IoT reference architecture, they're represented in the blue box crossing these two segments, is a document that describes how these building blocks can come together to support IoT solutions. Moving up the stack, we have our private preview of Azure Digital Twins. This is a service that focuses on how to model and interact with any physical environment, enabling you to really track the past and, more importantly, predict the future using data that you've collected. And there at the top, our highest level entry point for solution building is our fully managed IoT application platform, Azure IoT Central. On the far left, you can see that crossing these different entry points for building IoT solutions, we have the Azure Security Center for IoT, which is an Azure-based cloud security service that provides comprehensive IoT device threat protection. So any IoT architecture can really be broken down into things, insights, and actions. So starting on the left-hand side of this diagram, you can see things like medical, ambient, and consumer devices, some of which may take advantage of things like our Azure Sphere secure MCUs. Many scenarios will leverage one of Azure's Edge offerings as an on-premise gateway to the cloud. And in the middle of this diagram, you can see the two solution options from the previous slide. So option one is really a managed service option. This is a higher level entry point. IoT Central is built using the same underlying platform services as option two. However, it's managed and maintained by Microsoft. And option two is the platform services-based approach, where you can achieve a higher level of control by using platform services as building blocks for your custom IoT solution. So in healthcare scenarios, data interoperability is often paramount, and the Azure APIs for FHIR can help you store your PHI data in a secure and compliant endpoint. You can develop your knowledge estate with Azure's analytic, cognitive, and machine learning services. And then on the far right, connecting your insights into health applications where decisions are actually made. Applications can be built using Microsoft's Power Platform and BI apps, things like Dynamics 365 or Teams for Healthcare. Or you can choose to build custom web or mobile apps that integrate directly with patient or client portals. So I want to touch on how you might go about finding which type of solution is right for your business. So we found that this decision is often influenced by the dimensions seen here. The first of those dimensions is expertise in your level of proficiency building cloud solutions. The second is control, with what aspects of the solution do you want and or need to customize. And the last is pricing. So how important to you is fine-tuning the overall cost versus something like price predictability. So the strength of your answers to these three questions will really sway the direction of your approach. So answers to the left of middle will indicate a more platform services-based approach. This approach will require the highest or the greatest level of expertise, but it allows you the highest degree of control and customization. Answers to the right of middle indicate a more managed approach, like Azure IoT Central, because you may not wish to dedicate extensive resources to system architectures, and you're willing to forgo some degree of control in exchange for predictable pricing and speed to market. So how can you go about jump-starting your IoT healthcare investment? So Azure IoT Central is a managed platform, and it's built to assist partners across the chasm into that mainstream market opportunity that I spoke about earlier when talking about crossing the chasm. Its mission is to really simplify device connectivity and management so that IoT data can be integrated at scale into business applications. So to accelerate solution builders on their journey, we have a number of industry-focused application templates for the IoT Central platform. An application template is a tool to help you as a solution builder kick off your IoT solution development. And each template comes with sample operator dashboards, device templates, simulated devices, and even a rich and extensive set of documentation. So continuous patient monitoring is one such template that we have for the healthcare industry and for solution builders to jumpstart them on their journey. So this template allows you to see a working IoT Central application instance with simulated wearable devices and pairs with a rich set of documentation and tutorials. So in just a second, I'm going to show you one of the customers who has built their solution using Azure IoT Central. But first, I want to review the role of the Azure IoT connector for FHIR that you see here in this architecture. So the Azure IoT connector for FHIR is a feature of the Azure API for FHIR, Data Store, and it's a secure and compliant connector for normalizing IoT device signals and converting them into FHIR observations. So this connector can assist with integration of IoT data, either coming through a service like IoT Central or IoT Hub, and translate that data into interoperable FHIR standard. It's a health-specific complement to the broader Azure IoT portfolio. So let's talk a little about one of our partners, Sensoria, who's been leveraging IoT Central and the Azure API for Fire to build a full remote patient monitoring solution. Sensoria has combined their expertise in smart wearables with their knowledge of the Azure cloud to unlock provider solutions that improve the care of patients with diabetic foot wounds via, as you see here, the Modus Smart Boot, which is a connected boot for diabetic foot wounds, as well as those who are bound to wheelchairs due to spinal cord injuries or other injuries via their newest device development, which is called the Sensoria Mat. So these connected devices give providers insights into their patients' activity patterns in compliance and dramatically improve the quality of the care that they can offer their patients. So let's take a look at Sensoria's architecture, and then I'm going to jump out to a demo of their actual solution. So Sensoria is an ISV and started on their IoT journey with just a single solution in mind. They were building for the Modus Smart Boot to improve the care of diabetic foot ulcers. I hope that you can see in this slide that there is a significant similarities between our continuous patient monitoring application template for IoT Central and the Sensoria Internet of Me health platform. With IoT Central as the backbone of their IoT solution, they avoided spending significant cycles on building the IoT plumbing and were able to really focus their energy on building mobile applications for their patients, as well as provider dashboards for their customers. Because IoT Central is a device-agnostic platform, they could easily extend their solution to support their latest device, the Sensoria Mat. So I want to jump out and take a look at the IoT Central application to see how a managed application platform can accelerate solution development. So bear with me, I'm going to jump out to my browser. So can you see my browser now, Ron? Is that all right?
I can see, yes, I can see your browser. Welcome to IoT Central.
Okay, great.
You know, I also just want to point out, Cory, that we do have flexibility in the schedule. Hal's, the physician's comment were very compelling, so no problem as you want to coordinate with your colleague Sally to do the demo. We've got more than enough time to feature both of you to make sure we've got the content not only for people on this current webinar, but for future digital downloads.
Okay, that makes sense. If I'm assuming you're confirming with Sally in the back channel, so I'll hand off to Sally to cover the front end of this once I cover the central. Great. Okay, so here I am in my browser. This is Azure IoT Central. It's the home page or the landing page. And here in the left now, you can see I'm on the home where we have a lot of the marketing messaging, and including all of the latest updates that we have in the platform. Since it's a SaaS application platform, we make continuous updates to it from a feature perspective. If I were wanting to start with the continuous patient monitoring solution, I could go to build and then select the healthcare industry, and this is where you'll actually see the continuous patient monitoring application template. If I clicked create app here, I would be able to deploy this into my Azure subscription in a matter of honestly less than a minute, and I could see a working sample. In addition to that, there's a learn more resource here, and we have extensive documentation and tutorials and how-to guides on how to use this application template as an accelerator. So that's kind of the build tab. Once you have applications in the system, in the My Apps, you'll be able to see all the applications. I'm actually going to jump out now to the Sensoria demo application that I have that's really mirrored or based off of what they use in their production solution, to kind of show you the features and capabilities of IoT Central and how it can expedite your solution development. So here we are on the dashboard of the Sensoria application. You can see that there are some tiles that are on this dashboard that are related to the Modus Smart Boot. But before kind of detailing the dashboard, I want to look at the device templates, because IoT Central is built on top of a modeling language called DTDL, and it's what our Azure IoT portfolio uses to understand the capabilities of devices. So the fundamental concept underlying Central is a modeling language, a JSON-based modeling language that allows devices to communicate to solutions such that I can tell what they're capable of doing from a commanding and controlling perspective, as well as what kind of telemetry and information I can expect to receive from them. So here I am on the Modus Smart device template. You can see that the device template is a mix of device data, things like the device's status, but even some more static things like the serial number of the device or the latest firmware version. And then it has also a set of telemetry and properties, and as well as a set of commands that the device can receive. So I can update the firmware of this device, or I can re-provision this device from a commanding perspective. And then there's also a set of health data, so patient health data that this device is reporting up to the Azure cloud. Things like the number of steps that the patient has taken, their current location, or even things like hardware-related metrics like device temperature, things that Sensoria would want to be keeping a pulse on. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard now, and I'm going to remind you, based off of the architecture that we looked at earlier, where we are kind of in the context of Sensoria's overall architecture. So we're here in the middle in Sensoria's platform. They're an ISV that provides these devices to healthcare providers, but they're responsible for maintaining the health and connectivity of these devices, re-provisioning them, securing them with firmware updates, and making sure that they're overall functioning well once they've been given to providers to use in their clinics. So the whole IoT Central application is really focused on those device metrics. So when we go back to the dashboard, we can see that for something like the Smart Boot, Sensoria is interested in monitoring things like battery level or device temperature for a given set of devices to make sure that those devices are operating efficiently and in being used by the providers in which they've been distributed to. The IoT Central platform brings together a set of capabilities that really expedite the IoT plumbing and maintenance, both from a connectivity perspective, but also from a device management perspective. So IoT Central includes a built-in rules engine. So Sensoria can set up something like a device temperature peak alert, where if a device temperature on average is greater than or equal to 80 degrees, they can send themselves an email alert or integrate with a custom webhook or send their notifications out to automation platforms like Microsoft Power Automate or Microsoft Azure Logic apps. So the rules engine is one of the powerful attributes built into the platform. It's available in all IoT Central apps. The other capability from a device management perspective is our jobs engine. So a user like Sensoria can actually execute and run jobs at scale within the system without having to build the underlying jobs infrastructure. So I have an example of a job that I ran, really assigning a set of devices to a given provider. So Ranchos Los Amigos is the rehabilitation clinic facility that Sensoria is providing these boots to. And so this job basically just goes and assigns Rancho as the provider in all of the applications, and you'll see how I can use that later to send data to Rancho's endpoints. So this is an example of the jobs engine. I can also run a new job effectively against a device group. So I can say against the Modus Smart Boot, I can update a cloud property, I can update properties on the device, or I can even command these devices. So all of this is built nicely into the platform. And then last but not least, I want to detail, I want to go back to the architecture diagram, and I want to show you one of the extensibility features that IoT Central has. So the Modus Smart Boot is obviously a Bluetooth device. It's communicating through a cell phone or a patient's phone, where they have their own experience, which you're going to see Sally demo in just a moment. And then that's going to basically send the IoT data into the IoT Central platform. But ultimately, Sensoria wants to take that IoT data and they want to integrate it into a provider dashboard, a custom web application that they've built. But they want to integrate that data into the Azure API for Fire because they're interested in the compliance and interoperability benefits of leveraging Fire as a standard. So this solution, IoT Central, can leverage the Azure IoT connector for Fire to do that data transformation into observations that then the dashboard can be built on top of. And the way that you do that is through IoT Central's data export feature. So in data export, I've set up a destination already. This is going to render arm in again. So I've set up a destination already to the IoT connector for Fire, which is through an Azure Event Hub endpoint. So once I set up a destination, I can actually configure an export to take the data that's flowing through this, like the telemetry data, for example, that's flowing through this, and send it to Rancho. So this allows you to filter based off of cloud properties and device properties. And if I look at the Modus Smart Boot, I can look at the hospital name, and I can say if the hospital name contains Rancho, then I want to basically send that data to the IoT connector for Fire. And what this is going to do is it's going to stream the telemetry data coming off of these boots out into the Fire compliant data store. Oops, I need to name it. It's going to stream that data out into that Fire endpoint, and then that enables Sensoria to feed the custom web application that they provide to Rancho downstream. So that's kind of the extent of the IoT Central portion of this overview. If Sally's on the call now, I'd be happy to kind of give presentation control to her, or Sally, I'm also happy to kind of walk through the MegaMap demo if that's easier. She's going to do a small demonstration of the applications that Sensoria has built relative to the provider application and the mobile application.
Okay, so based on what you just heard from Cory, what I'm going to do is kind of show the practitioner view. So these are the cohorts, the patients in the cohort that we're monitoring, and there's a bunch of them. You can see when their therapy started. This is still for the Sensoria boot, which foot is affected, and those types of things. And so the first thing we're going to do is take advantage of that Azure IoT connector for Fire and go ahead and import the data, in this case for this gentleman, Oscar Ward, who is going to start therapy with his Sensoria diabetic foot wound boot. So to provision it, we click on this QR code, and if he were there, he would hold up his cell phone, or it might even work over online. And then once he does that, it provisions his particular boot and the sensor with one of these programs based on where his foot ulcer is located on the bottom of his foot. So then he goes home, he's got this boot that he wears, and now we're going to kind of fast forward a couple of weeks and see how Oscar's doing. So you can see for the past several weeks we've been monitoring him, and he was doing a great job of being compliant with the protocol that was given to him. But he started kind of losing enthusiasm here toward the end of September. And so you can see, like, when he was off the boot, when he was resting, how much he was active. You can see the total steps of the day. And I only play a doctor on this demo. I'm not really a doctor. But the idea here is that, unlike most of us, when we're trying to increase the number of steps, he wants to minimize them. So you can see he's starting to lose his vim and vigor for the protocol. And so while you're looking at that, I can also share with you that there is a mobile app that Cory had mentioned that I can't seem to get over to this. Hold on 1 minute and bear with me. There we go. So he is also looking at his app on his phone, just like in the architectural diagram, and it gives him how many weeks of therapy is remaining, how well he's doing. When the boot is off, it reminds him, hey, go ahead and put your boot on and make sure he's staying compliant. So you can see how this would be really helpful. We're looking at one particular patient, but the way this is organized and architected, from here, when you're looking at the patient's data, you can say, you know what, I think I need to talk to Oscar. And so this is a way to communicate. Now this says schedule a visit, but it could be send a text message. It could be initiate a call. It could be initiate a video call. And while you do make that request, it immediately comes up on his mobile app as an alert. And so this is an opportunity where he can automatically start to engage with the practitioner see what's happening, see what he's doing wrong, or maybe there's something going on at home where he can't be as compliant as he should be. So that's kind of the practitioner-patient side of what Cory was sharing with us earlier. Cory, do you want to take back control, and since you have the deck right there available, and I'm going to walk through just a few innovation studies.
Oh, all right.
So I'm going to move through these fairly quickly, but I wanted to share, in keeping with some of the work that Cory and her team have done and some of the ways that we're helping our customers and partners use IoT, to show, in the case of COVID, how rapidly you can innovate. And these are two really very interesting and quite different scenarios. The first one comes from actually a consortium of partners, PCL, which is an architecture firm, WZMH, also another architecture firm, and Insight Digital, put together this citizen care pod. And what this is designed to do is to identify, based on the identification of needing to sequester people based on functions, whether it's COVID testing, whether you're going to the DMV, whether you're trying to ensure safety of students or teachers. This really gives folks a way to configure these modular devices based on their unique needs. They literally come in on the back of an 18-wheeler truck. They are plop down, they are connected to power and energy, and you now have a mobile unit to address a critical need and still keep the workers inside safe. So each unit is IoT enabled with things like environmental monitoring, physical distancing for the people in line, managing wait time, staff flow, and all kinds of other scenarios. So very interesting. There are people using this both in the US and in Canada. So the second one, again, very different, comes from two partners that came together to work on a wearable. So CareSpace and Avnet wanted to build an inexpensive wearable. So many of us are aware of these wearables that do like temperature monitoring and all of that, but they tend to be really expensive. And so what they did was they built something that is not only inexpensive and you can wear on your wrist to monitor your temperature and do things like identifying physical distancing breaches, but they have a version that can actually slip onto the wristband of your existing Apple Watch, for example. And so this becomes really important when you're thinking about return to work scenarios or return to play scenarios, going to a sporting venue or an entertainment venue. But the other interesting use case for healthcare, specifically for providers, is the ability to hand one of these to the family or loved one of someone who's in the hospital for, say, a week. You want to be able to monitor that family member so that they're not bringing in an illness or COVID while they're coming in and out of the hospital and in the patient's room. So it's the type of thing that once you've used it for a week, you dispose of it, and we're even looking into recycling those. So really interesting scenarios there. The next one I want to show, Cory, if you can go to the next one, great. Another team of partners have come together to build a smart hospital. Now, the two partners involved here are Schneider Electric, which is well known for their energy management, HVAC management, utilities management for large organizations, all IoT enabled. And then they teamed with ThoughtWire, who has this digital approach to hospital workflows and things like real-time location services, patient flow, staff flow, and the types of things that really can make a hospital run more efficiently. And so they came together to bring one solution to providers that give them unprecedented control over the entire medical facility. Heating, lighting, conference rooms and operatories and supply rooms, ensuring patient safety, reducing carbon footprint, and really focusing on improving patient and staff satisfaction. And then the last one I'm going to talk about today, because I'm trying to move through these fairly quickly, is from Stryker, which many of you know Stryker really well from the work they've done with beds and surgical robots. And one of the things that was important to them was to build an IoT platform that would enable them to collect, store, and analyze real-time performance and usage of thousands of the Stryker medical devices that are deployed throughout the world. And so they built this, and what they found was not only was the information that they were gathering informing their product development life cycle and improvements to the products and changes, but it was pieces of information that were also important to their customers. So they literally took what was internally facing data, turned it around, and built this customer-facing application called Smart Equipment Management. And it allows not only Stryker to understand things like predictive modeling and in-field diagnostic work, but it also allowed the customers, their providers, to understand how their devices were being used, if they were being optimized, when they were coming out of ideal range, which obviously for a surgical robot is critically important, and really established a level of trust of their devices, of Stryker's devices, with the practitioners in a way that hadn't been done before, so that every time that surgeon picks up a surgical robot from Stryker, he or she knows it's at peak efficiency and ready to go. So those were the quick stories of innovations. Wanted to also share a few resources that may be helpful for you when you think about getting started. Cory and I were talking, and this is basically one of our favorite resources that we share. We call it the cheat sheet. But it really gives you an idea about if you want to do certain things, like if you want to create IoT solutions quickly, use IoT Central like Sensoria has. If you want to think about integrating fire data and using a fire service, then we've got options there. If you want to do things that not only take advantage of fire data, but do things like patient engagement, care planning, all of that can be done with our Dynamics Health Accelerator. And then we also, and we didn't really touch on this, but it might have been mentioned in one of the other Microsoft sessions, we do have a software called Azure Sphere that sits on the microcontroller units and is being used and built to be added to devices to make them connected and highly secured. And I urge you, if you are into medical devices and you want to make them smart and not rely on on-prem scenarios for data management and analytics, take a look at the Azure Sphere information that we are sharing here. And then finally, this is the plethora of everything that we've talked about today, including some videos on our IoT for Healthcare website, more details on the innovation stories that we've shared today, as well as many others, both focused on IoT and then others that are focused with health. We have a really interesting healthcare spotlight IoT signals report that goes through the details of what colleagues in the healthcare space across the subverticals, payer, provider, pharma, life sciences, and med devices are thinking in terms of IoT, what they're doing to implement, what some of the blockers that they're coming against and how they're coping with them. And I urge you to not only take a look at that, but to look at it in probably about 2 months, because we've got a new version coming out. And then, of course, the templates that Cory shared with us, and then we've got some tutorials and things that if you are the type of person that likes to get into the bits and bytes of these types of solutions, it's a great place to go to get started. So, Cory, did I miss anything? Anything you want to add? Lightning speed.
Yeah, I'm fumbling for my mute. No, I think we did a great job, Sally. We even finished 7 minutes early.
Okay, Ron, we're back to you.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Well, thank you all very much. I think that was fantastic. It's amazing to see how technology is permeating healthcare facilities, pharmaceutical manufacturing. There's so many interconnected devices, and it's very exciting to see how Microsoft is enabling this ecosystem of so much data coming in, and how do you make sense of that?